Hello, Neil, and thank you for hosting this in your house. We will start to do an overview of a recent blog article that we've written. This is part 3 in our EBR implementation guide. The first part was on scoping, tips on scoping for projects, and the second one was on selecting EBR products. And this part will focus on POCs, POVs, and trials. Companies looking at EBR, they are increasingly looking to do trials and proof of concept, proof of value as part of the selection. Questions often come up to us around these topics, and in this article, in this blog post, we will aim to answer some of those. So Neil, we'll do this as a Q&A. So I'll pose some of the questions today, and we'll discuss your answers and to provide more feedback on these topics for our listeners. So first of all, what is an EBR trial, POC, and POV?
Yeah, well, I think if you've selected or are looking into EBR systems which you think fit your needs, it can be a good idea to test out whether that's true or not by using a trial or a proof of concept or a proof of value. I think these terms are quite similar, but in essence, they mean running a small project to confirm that the particular EBR that you're looking at will be suitable for your company.
And Neil, just in terms of concept, proof of value, could you talk about that in terms of what would be the difference? You said they're similar. Is there any different objective with those different types of use of the system, or let's say proof of a system?
Yeah, I guess proof of concept is really, will this tool meet my needs? You know, is this a tool that I'm going to be able to use in my setting, my factory? Whereas proof of value, I think, is the step beyond that. We've decided that this is a good tool. This is a type of tool that we can use, but can it really deliver the value for our setting, for our installation? So proof of value, be really looking to test out the system versus your needs, and confirm that the benefits that you're looking for would be realized.
Okay, great. And so why, the second question really is, why might you want to run a trial or proof of concept, proof of value? What would be, let's say, the reasons that our customers are approaching us for this type of activity before they go to a full implementation or deployment? Typically,
why people run a proof of concept or proof of value is they're looking to test out the benefits. So things like, you know, getting some hands-on experience with the product and testing it out, you know, in use. Check it fits with your own process. So everyone's production process is slightly different, and what might look perfect in concept, you know, maybe a little bit different when you use it in real life. So making sure the fit of the product with your process is good. Things like the usability of the solution. So can your users pick up this solution and use it quickly? You know, what's the training demand going to be like, and perhaps the change burden? It also helps you gather some data to prove that it's suitable. So, you know, a small team of people from your organization might test out the software. Usually they'll need to justify the purchase to some stakeholders. So running a proof of value, proof of concept or trial can help provide that data for convincing your stakeholders to procure the product. And finally, you know, an extension of that is building your business case and perhaps providing an estimate for a return on investment. These are all things that you can achieve by running a short-term project, POC, POV.
Very good. And maybe just to touch on you know, obviously there's been a lot of interest during COVID times, and you know, do you see that this type of activity is something that's practical to be done remotely, and to perform that, you know, through Teams meetings, let's say the engagement with the supplier? So do you see that this is practical and feasible, without having people on site. And of course, we have less restrictions now, but still, travel and visiting customers is still not fully back running in some parts of the world.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's fantastic to be going back on some sites now, but we've all learned different ways of working through the pandemic, and we've realized, I think, how efficient you can be doing these things remotely. Our experience with our software is that you can do these trials remotely, and it's a good test, I think, of the supplier and of the product as to whether that can be done. But certainly, we've been able to run trials, with teams coming from Asia, from Europe and America all at once, coming together. We've set up and run trials in that way. Often we can set them up in only a few days or a few weeks. And certainly the clients that we've had doing that in recent months and years have found those to be really valuable. So I think absolutely it's a great way to get an insight into the product, get hands-on with it, without the expense of big workshops on site. You can do it remotely. Great.
Just to reinforce one of the points you mentioned, Neil, so really to evaluate, can your organization, can your users pick it up quickly, and is it something that they can rapidly adopt, and they start to work with it. Ultimately, EBR applications and manufacturing IT, it has to be bought into the company, and it has to be sustained by your organization, our customer's organization, with the support from the supplier. The more minimal that support and the more that your team can do, then the more value you'll get out of the system, and let's say the easier implementation will be based on that self-service model, if you will. So that's something that definitely you experience in a trial, and we've seen very successful in our customer engagements recently. And so I guess a very key question is, should you actually do a trial and a POC, a POV? And so it's something which comes up quite a lot, but it might not always be the right approach depending on where you are and the maturity of the organization. So do you think it's an automatic step, Neil? Is it something that everybody should consider as a prerequisite for an EBR project?
No, I think you're right, Dave. I don't think it is an automatic decision. I don't think you should think, oh, I like that software, that looks good, let's run a trial. I think there are some questions that you can ask yourself first. That might mean you get better value out of any trial that you run in the future. So, don't just jump to it because the supplier says you can and offers that. I think, think about getting your main stakeholders on board early on, understanding what their needs are, and then deciding, once you have kind of a wider group of stakeholders in your company on board to this, then you can perhaps specify what you need to learn from the trial more accurately and get an even better value from the trial. I think, you shouldn't do a trial at the expense of some ordinary due diligence about the product and about the supplier. That's always a good thing to do. It doesn't and shouldn't take too much time, but thinking about the product components, doing perhaps some high-level scoping, thinking about how you would configure it for your company, how you would implement it. Would you implement this as a private cloud, a multi-tenant cloud in your own on-premise? Those kinds of things are probably relatively easy questions to ask and get answered at the early stages. And don't do a trial and then find you hit one of these questions later and it becomes a blocker. So time spent up front and thinking about how you would implement the software would, I think, be very valuable and only inform a better proof of concept or proof of value later.
Yeah, I fully agree. They have proved to be very useful, but it should not be a distraction, right? As you mentioned, Neil, to let's say the due diligence parts that you need to do. and the infrastructure related or other implementation decisions that you need. I guess if you know what you want and then you're looking to match the tool to that, then it might be counterproductive to some extent as well, right? So I think it might dictate how you do the trial, whether you need to do a trial, but certainly we're always happy to discuss with our customers an early stage what's appropriate, and if this is the right type of activity to kickstart their project, or are there more fundamental questions to cover?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can perform a bit of a self-check, before entering into a trial. Ask yourself, what information do I really need in order to select a solution, get agreement, and make a decision? Because I think by asking and answering that question for yourself, that will determine, well, actually, in order to make this decision, I definitely need to do a trial, or in order to make this decision, perhaps I need to do a little bit more due diligence, and perhaps interview the supplier a little bit more. Asking and answering that question, it can be very valuable, I think, before you launch into a project.
Absolutely. And then what would you say are the steps that you would see, that we've followed to help companies move forward that use of the system? Could you cover those, Neil, in terms of the high level steps or let's say important people objectives to outline in the trial?
Yes, definitely. I mean, probably 6 or so basic steps that you should consider when thinking about running a trial or a POV, POC.